Hey everybody, welcome to Porn-Free Millennial. I'm your host, Mac. Today we're going to be talking about activities in recovery. I wanted to get this message out. I know the last podcast I did was a little less than a month ago. Check it out. Porn is a Vampire. Such a great conversation with Dr. Gregory Borsse and one of his close friends, Cale Zeldin, both experts in English and philosophy. And it's been a little bit of time. I've been really busy. I work a full-time job. Got a lot of things cooking right now. Been doing some writing as well on my Substack, Porn-Free Millennial, and haven't quite got to podcasting again. And I missed it. I missed podcasting, and I really wanted to get a message out because I'm going to be out of town starting tomorrow through Sunday. My dad and my girlfriend were going up into the Colorado mountains, be about 9,000, 10,000 feet of elevation. We're going to be going elk hunting. I've been going elk hunting now probably for a little over 10 years. I go every year with my dad. It's just a tradition that we do that really, I think, just brings out the best of us when we're out there. You know, we're out in the wild. We set up our tent, cutting down trees, making cross poles. We've got a stove we put in there. We like to rough it out there, put chains on our tires, ATV, all that good stuff. And really looking forward to it. It's always a great time of the year to reflect, because there's a lot of quiet time. You're typically out there hiking in the snow, also sitting and waiting, just waiting for an elk to pop by. And hopefully we can fill our freezers this year with some elk meat. Also do the processing as well. So I'm excited to hopefully be making some elk jerky this year and some elk jalapeno poppers. That's the thing I like to do for Thanksgiving. So with that being said, I wanted to get a podcast out before being off. And I know when I get back in, it's going to be Thanksgiving week, and work's been pretty busy for me. So definitely wanted to get a podcast out before then. So why bring this concept up, activities in recovery? Well, when I do fast check-ins with my little brother, which I've talked about those before, I can link down the show notes, the episode that we did. A part of our check-ins that we do on a daily basis, we talk about, one of the things that we talk about is activities in recovery. Like, what are we doing in our recovery? Because hate to break it to you, but when you're trying to live a life without porn, if you're just trying to avoid porn and that's what you're doing all day, is just resisting the temptation and fighting that, you might last for a little bit sobriety wise, but you're going to fall back into that bad habits because you're actually not you're not replacing those bad habits that you have and that I've had and still have with good habits and healthy habits, things that are going to fulfill you, bring you purpose in life. And there's four main tenets of activities in recovery that at least I follow when we do check-ins and that I focus on a daily basis. Now, this comes just to give credit to Matt Dobschutz. He's the host of Porn-Free Radio, as well as Vern Tomke. He's the host of Finding Traction and Pastors on Porn. They were the ones that brought this into my life through their podcast, as well as doing groups with them, recovery groups. This framework is really helpful. So we're going to talk about it today. I'm going a little bit off the cuff, so bear with me. But we're going to be talking about activities in recovery, and there's basically four tenets of this. So you've got your spiritual health. How's your spiritual health doing? How's your physical health doing? What kind of physical activities you're doing? Your relationships, so focusing on connections. And then number four is your passions. What passions are you leaning into in this stage of your life? So number one, spiritual health. I mean, spiritual health is huge. If you've ever heard of like Alcoholics Anonymous, there's also Porn Addicts Anonymous. The first step is finding that higher power and basically giving yourself up and surrendering to that higher power. Now, if you're listening, you're not that religious, I would think about, what's your spirituality look like? Do you believe in a higher power? Are you having those thoughts in your mind of, hey, like there's something else out there. There is a God, there is meaning, there's a meaning after this life, and what we do in this life matters, right? And for me, spiritual health's been a great indicator of how I'm doing in my recovery. I feel like in times of my life where I haven't really been that dialed into those spiritual conversations that I'm having internally or externally, I'm typically struggling with recovery. I'm more in the stage of just resisting and white knuckling, just thinking, hey, I'm doing this all by myself. And in those stages of life, that's where I've had a lot of struggle. That's where there's been a lot of, I think, just reliance on willpower. And I think, as we all know, you can rely on your willpower for a certain amount of time, but there's going to be times in your life where you're tired. You don't really want to do this anymore. You want to give back into these old habits, to this medication that's been in our lives of porn. This thing that's just, hey, it's at my fingertips. I can go to it anytime I want, for this release, this way to numb whatever the pain is in my life or whatever the uncomfortable truths are, just a way to escape. And I think finding a higher power and dialing into your spiritual health is super important. That's why I mentioned it first, because I think in some ways, when I think about it, you're never really alone. You're not alone if you're having those internal conversations, with your God, with that higher power. For me personally, this isn't like a Christian podcast per se, but I have shared many times that, I am a Christian. I was raised Catholic. I am, now I've been going non-denominational services for the last 7 years or so, and Bible study. Been with the same group of guys for about 4 years. And I'd say it's been so helpful for me. It really helps me kind of put things in perspective. This recovery, this tough task of reprogramming my mind and desexualizing it. There's a meaning to that. I'm serving this higher good, this higher pursuit to better myself, and in my life to live more like Christ, to embody more of the way that he taught how to live in the Bible, and how to live a life where we're not so focused on worldly desires and on the flesh, but a higher pursuit to glorify God and to do good to others, see people as creations of Christ, and value others and value life. And I think that really hit home with me, especially when I was really struggling with porn, where I hit some rock bottom moments. I think I've mentioned it before, but I got to some really low points. I got some points in life at one point really where I didn't really want to carry on. I didn't really see a purpose. It really was like when I knew my marriage was coming to an end, where divorce was, on the table and accepted as something that, hey, this is just going to happen. I remember a point in my life where I was just like, why does this even matter? Like, why go on? I've failed. I've just had too much sin in my life, and I'm not worthy. And I think something, at least through my Christian faith, that I've realized is that uh, that I am loved, that Christ sacrificed himself, God sacrificed himself on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins. Like, the price has been paid, and all I need to do is I just need to accept him in my life. I need to accept this higher power in my life. And I think when we do that, it relieves a lot of that pressure. It's one of those things to where there's grace. There's grace if we accept it. And I think that's really important in recovery. I just wrote an article on my Substack called, it was, I think it was Shame Will Not Prevail. And it's a pretty quick read. I mean, it's like a minute, really quick. But what I was trying to get to in that article was like, I think shame oftentimes is the thing that holds us in this cycle. It holds us in this cycle of using porn to numb or to escape, and to soothe us. And we have this shame, we feel terrible after we do it. And there's a whole list of things that happen afterwards. We have to, are we going to tell the truth, or are we going to lie about it? Are we going to keep doing it, or are we going to stop? And I think, when we give it up to higher power and we trust in God's path for us in life, I think we can use these moments of failure as stepping stones and as ways to grow and ways to learn to be better people. So, with that being said, first tenet of activities in recovery is like, how is your spiritual health doing? So I just say, for you, wherever you're at in life, just think about that. Like, think about, where does spirituality play in your life? Where does your religion, how does that shape you? What are some ways in your life that you can improve your spiritual health? Is that reading the Bible or whatever religion that you follow? Is it following the path that is set forth? I know with the Bible, when I read it, there's a lot of like hard truths that I come to where I'm like, yeah, I'm not quite following that well. I'm not following that teaching well. I'm not going down that path the right way. And then I'm reaping what I'm sowing. I'm reaping those seeds of destruction that I'm putting in there. And I think every time I realize that, it gives me a good like swift kick in the rear end to better myself and to focus inward on like, hey, how can I improve? How can I do better? How can I glorify God and the beautiful world that's been created? And the world is what we make of it. And I think I've just thought about that a lot. And going into the season of reflection as the year's ending and nearing a year of sobriety, I think this spiritual health really it plays a role. And again, I feel like when I'm not connected spiritually, or I'm not thinking about it, I'm not seeing life through that spiritual lens. Oftentimes that's when I'm struggling the most and when I'm not making the best decisions. So think about your spiritual health. That's the first tenet of activities in recovery. Like, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Now, it's not like this thing that you have to quantify where it's like, hey, if I read the Bible every day, I'm going to be fine. It's really like your intentionality behind it. Like, what do you need to improve your spiritual health? So that's number one. Number two would be uh, your relationships. I think that's what I said. It's either relationships or physical health, what I said next, but we'll go with relationships. Relationships are really important, right? I think when we're struggling with porn, or at least me in my journey, I find like when I'm really struggling with the temptations, or I relapse with porn, or I'm on that road to relapse. I'm typically isolating myself. I'm not talking to people about my struggles. I'm I would say I'm not connecting. And that's why relationships is a really important part of activities and recovery is how are we connecting with people? And this would be like your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your best friends, the people around you, your family, that the people that care about you, that are going to listen to you. How is that playing a role in your recovery? I often find that, when I'm having good constructive conversations with the people around me that I love, I'm normally doing well in recovery. I feel like I'm not hiding anything. I'm being myself. I'm leaning into my identity, this new identity that I'm carving out. And that's a great way to reprogram yourself, is to connect with people. Because I think with porn, we disassociate. We're watching a video or we're looking at images. We're turning people into objects. We're objectifying their sexuality for our own pleasure, our own desire. And I think as a big turning point for me in my recovery is just seeing people as people. And it sounds like such a weird kind of dumb thing to say, like, oh, of course, that's how we should look at people. But I think when we're looking at porn, we're watching it, we're compulsively using it, we're almost like just kind of saying, well, those aren't like really people. These are just, whatever names you want to call them, but they're still people. And when we're doing this act, we're objectifying them. And I think the more that we connect with people, the more that we embrace human connection, the less like porn's I think hooks are in us, and the less desirable it is to go to this as a way to heal or to whatever. Great podcast. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, by Matt Dopshi's at Porn-Free Radio, that really helped me out was porn is a solution. And when he talks about this concept, it might seem uh, it might seem like, why would you call porn a solution, right? But when you think about it, it has been the solution that we've chosen. from a young point in time to to we're trying to like heal something. We're trying to fill some kind of void in our life with it. But oftentimes, what it does, I think, is it disassociates us from connection. We become less intimate. We become less patient. We become, I think, like less interested in people. And I think for me in my life, I can look at past relationships I was in. I talk about my divorce. I think porn played a huge part in like my attitude, I think, towards women and towards like connection with women. It was more transactional versus being more fulfilling. And so I really challenge you when you're listening to this is think about like your relationships. Think about how connected you are. Are you intentional about your relationships? Or are they more just transactional? And I think when we lean more into our relationships being more wholesome and fulfilling, it can really help break that cycle of using porn to fill the void. So I challenge you as you're listening to this, think about your relationships, think about the health of those, and like how can you lean into those more? So that's number two is relationships. Number three is physical health. Physical health's been a little bit of a struggle for me. I'd say like post divorce, I've put on probably about 40 pounds. Um, I think a lot of that started when I was on my road trip in my RV. Have talked about that before. I bought an RV after I got divorced last year. And I feel like I was pretty healthy for a bit. And then I was passing through the southeast of the United States, which is like Florida. And I was in South Carolina for a little bit. I was in North Carolina for a little bit, and then Tennessee. They've got some amazing food down there. I would say, especially in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee, fantastic food. But food is very lots of fried food, and I definitely indulged in that, and I probably was indulging in that food, and one, just a way to experience culture. But if you dig down more deeply, I think I was eating a lot of my emotions, and I still struggle with that. I struggle with like, hey, I'm if I'm feeling emotionally like I'm struggling and I'm not in a good mental place. Uh, it used to be like really porn is where that void would be filled, but now, living a porn-free life, it's almost like I shifted that solution more to food and just overeating. So I've been getting into the gym a lot more often. But if you ask my brother, yeah, that's always been a thing I talk about all the time. And I haven't always been the best at, getting back into physical shape. But I've been getting in the gym a lot more lately, I think the past few weeks, and it's really boosted my mental health. Like I just feel a lot more like I'm getting more accomplishments in the day, right? Because let's just say you had a bad day, but you went to the gym or you went on a nice walk, got a good sweat going, were able to get your thoughts out there and think about things while you're lifting or working out, running, all that. It's a great way to really get out that energy and to get out that energy in a healthy way. Oftentimes too, physical health, like I think of it as you're doing something in public, you're out there, you're not in the basement or your room in the dark with that temptation at your fingertips, like you're actually out somewhere public doing something that's bettering your health. And I think like physical health, I think, is intertwined with mental health. I think a big part of physical health too, if you ask my mentor, Vern Tomke, something I check in a lot when we do our weekly group meetings is sleep. I struggle with sleep sometimes. I think a lot of times it's the restless mind. You got a lot of things going. But when I get really good sleep, I just feel so much better the next day. So I think really with physical health, if you're not in good physical health, and I'll raise my hand, I'm guilty of that, putting on some weight, not getting as good as sleep, it's something that's on my mind constantly. And really physical health is something where like you're in the business of doing something and taking action and following through with what you're going to say. And boy, does that feel good, like when you get a good workout in. So I think physical health is really integral because I think when you're not feeling good physically and you're feeling lethargic, I think that can kind of add some shame, add some guilt. And I think that the shame and the guilt, at least for me, is a trigger for using porn, where I'm more tempted. If I just feel like, hey, I'm being so lazy, like I'm not eating well, I'm not I'm not working out, not in good physical shape, it can definitely wear on the good habits and the good I would say like routines and overall like your health in recovery. So physical health's huge. I think a big thing that's helped me before is just having some kind of I think framework for like a diet. You don't have to be on a specific diet, but for me, it's helped at times to like restrict certain things or to do intermittent fasting where, hey, maybe I'll be like 16 hours. Typically for men, I think it's about 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours having an eating window. That's really helpful. Another thing that's helped me before too is just not eating meals after 8 o'clock at night. That typically helps us with your sleep and with like your digestion. So I'm not going to prescribe any kind of regimen for health or for diet, but I think just thinking about it and being intentional about it can be really helpful in recovery. So physical health is really important. And then the last piece is passions. I mean, I think passions are huge. It really helps tie in like the spiritual, the relationships, the physical is like passions. Like what are you passionate about? What are things that you do where maybe it's you're working in all of that. You're working in your relationships, your spiritual health, and your physical health, and your passions. Or it could be, just something a little bit separate from that. But I typically think they're pretty intertwined. I think typically when you're doing something that you're passionate about, they'll typically, I feel like, link you in with people that are like-minded, that are doing the same thing. For me, I think a big passion of mine has been doing this podcast, has been writing on my Substack about my experiences and my mission to live a life free of porn and to help people along the way with that. And the interesting thing I think for me with at least my passion about doing this stuff is I think it's like a way of therapy for me. Typically, I feel like when I'm doing a podcast or when I'm writing, I'm typically talking about something that maybe I'm struggling with, and it helps me put words to that feeling that I'm having deep inside. And I feel like when I'm really leaning into my passions, like I'm writing, I'm podcasting about this subject, uh, it really helps in my recovery because it helps me like think about this pursuit. I'd say like in a deeper way. It helps me conceptualize it, and that just bolsters my motivation, and it helps me every day, because even if I'm not writing or I'm not podcasting, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about, hey, like what's something I could talk about, what's something I could write about that could be helpful for other people, and in turn that helps me out. It helps me, I would say, hone my mindset and my resolve. Other passions that I love to do, I mean, I like to travel. So traveling in my RV, you go and seeing different sites, taking pictures, videos, and sharing that with people is also really fun. And another one's fishing. I love to fly fish. I love to hunt as well. That's why I'm going out and doing this weekend, with my dad and girlfriend, getting out there and hunting. It's a huge passion of mine. I think passions are things that help you get in a flow state to where you're just in the present. You're not thinking about the past. You're not thinking about the future. You're just in this present state of just doing something that you could just lose time. Like you could just look up and be like, oh my gosh, like 3 hours have passed and I've just been having a really good time doing this. But it's different for everybody, like what your passions are. But I would say really think about that in your recovery and lean into like, hey, like what am I passionate about? Because I think when we're in this cycle of porn use and we just can't stop, it almost becomes like the thing that you lose time doing, but it's not like helpful. It's not healthy. It's not actually like bettering your life. It's actually undermining things in your life that are good. And I think about that a lot. I think, hey, if I'm not doing my passions and I'm not leaning into those, like, what am I doing? Like, what's my purpose here? And I think when we lack that purpose and we lack that direction, our old bad habits can fill that void. So really, passions is huge. So again, just to sum all this up, as you're going through your week, your day, think about these four activities: your spiritual health. How's your health doing spiritually? your relationships, how's your connection doing, how are you connecting with others, and then your physical health. What are you doing to better your physical health? And then number four, what are you doing to lean into your passions? And I think if you can have that mindset going into recovery on a daily basis, it's really going to help you. I think a lot of people struggle with that, and a lot of people, including me, for like 2 decades of being in this cycle to where I just felt like I can't like break this. Like at times I just wanted to give up. Like how could I live a porn free life? And I think it's a mindset thing where you got to stop thinking about um like resisting it and more think about like what are the activities that you're doing that are basically going to move you past it, move you to like a higher aim. Because I think when we're just resisting, we're kind of just going on a flat line, a flat road. There's no momentum really, if we have a bad day or we're tired and we're unmotivated, it's so easily instead of going forward to go backwards, like sometimes instead of like a flat line, it's like might look like you're on a flat road, but really there's a decline and you're going to start going downhill again. And I think or it could just be uphill where you don't even want to go up it. I don't know if this road analogy is working out the way I thought about it in my head, but what I'm trying to say is, I think when you have these activities, you have a clearer view of what your destination is going to be, and it's a more honest view of how to get there, and really how to get there is to lean into things that are healthy for you, and not just to resist something. It's not like, hey, on your gravestone or your obituary, it's going to say like, hey, Mac lived a porn-free life, period. It should say, all the things that we did in our life that were good, that helped others, that were good, healthy things that we did, that made our existence in this life meaningful. And living porn-free is great, but it's also about like what are you doing in your life that is purposeful, that is meaningful, that is healthy. That's what it's all about, is leaning into those things. So I hope that provides a good framework for you as you're going through those four things. Really focus on those. Yeah, and feel free to leave some comments on the podcast or on the Substack on what are some things you're leaning into. I think it'd be really cool to hear that from you. But with that being said, all that's it. That's all I had to say. Hopefully that was helpful for you. If you want more of my content, I write on Substack. My Substack is Porn-Free Millennial. I also have another page called Max Musings. That's me just having an outlet to talk about other things besides porn recovery, because that can be a heavy subject sometimes. Looking forward to, I got asked to write an article for Liberty Magazine coming up about just my travels in my RV and living this remote life where I'm traveling, I'm working remote, and been doing that now for uh, since April of 2023, so a little over a year. And I think that'll be a really cool article to write and talk about. So I'm excited about that. But with that being said, other things on my Porn-Free Millennial Substack, I did start a weekly newsletter I send out on Mondays. So basically, it has like a theme to it that can help you on a weekly basis, with some focuses. And also in there, I'll have some a community spotlight where typically I'm going to pick, a neat comment that someone posted and highlight that. Uh, Also point out I've got a 30-day podcast challenge. So that's basically just, hey, for 30 days, listen to one podcast a day that's focused on recovery. And I have a bunch of good podcasts in there, some of my own, but others from people that I listen to a lot, like Porn Free Radio, Finding Traction, Pastors on Porn. Those are a few of them there. And then I also have links to other articles that are useful for that week that talk about that porn and porn recovery. So with that being said, everybody, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Hopefully I come back with good news. Typically it's about like a 20% chance, I'd say, when you're on public land to get an elk. So hopefully we get one this year. But have a great week. Keep fighting the good fight, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.